wireless, some very new areas, and you hired this bright person. If you don't cater to these folks, you will not have them. And as a result, you will not open a new business in your company. So again, more leeway to them, because they are also managing only their own energy, not energy of 10. But with a manager or a VP or a director, absolutely much, much higher standard.
Atul, I have a question on creating a culture which is driven based on mission rather than looking at paycheck.
Can you speak up?
Okay, my question is based on creating a culture that works for a mission rather than a paycheck. I want to share an experience before I jump on two more. When I had the pleasure to work with you, one of the things that inspired me is, as you said, manage by walking, right? When I was working as an engineer for you, I always used to think what's the next thing I have for Atul when he comes by? Could you give me some pointers on how to create the culture? Manage by walking is an excellent example, which I'm taking to manage my team, and I saw excellent results. Is there any other techniques that you can share to create a culture that is driven by mission?
Yeah, so I think first thing, when you're creating a culture driven by mission, is you have to have a vision which is exciting. I don't know how many of you watched the Mars landing from NASA, and if you get a chance to watch that 7-minute terror video, right? NASA is a very good example. When President Kennedy put the vision, man on the moon and back safely, it was a very concise, very compelling vision, which galvanized thousands and thousands of people. So I think, as you're thinking through that culture and that mission, having a expansive vision which is exciting, expansive, tough to achieve, I think is very important. But as you're creating that, making sure that they are participating with you in that creation. So it's not just your vision, it's their vision, is a very important step. If you achieve that, then what you'll find is that next day when you come to work, or next week when you are discussing, suddenly it's no longer your vision. You have unleashed 10, 15 people now who are thinking through that vision and its execution. And then all the skills I described, listening, participation, MBWA, they play a very key role, because suddenly people see this as not as a job but as a mission. But it ties back with vision, it ties back with values, because you're not saying, hey, do this because I think this is where you should go. You actually created, through that symbiosis, it's their vision actually. Success is when it becomes their vision, no longer your vision. And most of the companies, most of the leaders at the end should go that route, that it is the company's vision. When they step aside, a company flourishes, company continues to run, because other people carry on the vision.
And last question.
Just a question on the gap between the academic research and the industry. I see the gap reducing. What is your take? Because I see that with such a change and disruption and technology changes, you got to go back to the fundamentals, the roots. I believe the best way to go is academics, and the gap is shrinking. What is your take?
Yeah, a very, very insightful question. I think what I see happening, say, in next 10 years, is that for us engineers, we need to be if you watch folks in medicine, the advanced doctors, they go back to school for latest techniques, latest surgical techniques, latest bioelectronic techniques, and they get certified. They actually pay a lot of attention in their education. I think we have to do a lot more than we have done. I can say that for myself. That's why I tell my kids that we were lucky that we had jobs where you could stay 5 years in a job. I think for our next generation, it's going to be a lot more frequent change. It'll be a lot more continuous education, and companies will reward expertise. So times are changing. So coming back to your question, recently I had a chance to sit in Stanford computer science colloquium, and there was an expert talking about SDN, and I said, I need to learn about SDN, the software defined networks, and the best thing I can do is go to a graduate school. And in Bay Area we are so lucky to have great resources, and the best experts in SDN were talking about control plane, multicasting, a lot of things, which I just sat there. So I think that gap has to be reduced between academics and industry. And the companies who are being very successful, they are being successful for two reasons. One, either they are hiring a lot of fresh folks from school, like Facebook for example, or Google for example, and they are continuing to innovate. And the companies which have not hired the fresh blood have to recirculate or invest aggressively in training their experienced engineers into these new technologies, because experienced engineers know life cycles, they know quality, they know methodicity, they can execute, which the new engineers have to learn. But a lot of companies have cut back on training, cut back on seminars, cut back on industry shows, cut back on university programs. So it's, I think a progressive startup, for example, where you have chance to create the culture, should be investing. In fact, if your engineer comes to you and say, I want to take this afternoon off, go to Stanford, absolutely support that. Because what will happen is this engineer is going to come back more fired up, more motivated, and you just turned his job into a mission. So we talked about mission. That's a good example where this engineer will come back and give you actually extra night that day to deliver on what he had promised or she had promised. So I think all these principles I'm describing, they're very easy, but you'll be amazed how many times in action people don't execute that. But I would highly encourage, I think, for those who have another 20 years to go, you make a very key point that we got to reduce the gap between, because latest research, advanced algorithms are going on in the universities. And we just have to devote more bandwidth.
Atul, you spoke a lot about management by walking around, but now we are also dealing with a lot of virtual environments where a large part of the company is distributed. So, what is your thought on how do you carry forward this management by walking around virtually?
Yeah. So a Skype video, no. Actually, I would say that if you are a early stage company or mid-stage company or a medium or a large company, it is very important once a year, at least once a year, to go show your face as a leader. Now, if you can do more than that, great, but because what ends up happening during that once a year is that as a leader, you emphasize the vision, the value, the direction, and this employee feels that he or she is not a plug-compatible part in a system design, but they are a respected employee who is a very key part of the company, and only you can do that. You can't delegate that role. That role is something you need to do. Now, this also ties with another question, that this brings a significant challenge to the balance in life. We have a 12-hour difference with India or 8-hour difference with Europe, and you're doing conferences and all that. So I think the role of management is a lot more challenging now than probably 2 decades back or 15 or 10 years back. But then you have to ask, you have to introspect yourself. Are you ready for that global manager role? And if you're not, because you're not willing to do those things, then you will not excel. You will just not excel. Then you have to figure out, well, do I go into a role where I'm not stretched this way? I could do maybe local sales or local biz dev, or those are all right questions to be asking. Because the best managers of the future are global managers. They are not people who are just narrowly in a silo. And I see that quite a bit. So the moment you find that you're not enjoying dealing with people, interacting with people. You might like to really sit alone at your desk. That's a very key transition. And then if you put yourself in a very intense people leadership role, you will fail. So it all ties back again that to passion. When you see your passion dwindling, that's a red flag. Absolute red flag. Because what's happening is you're losing your ambition and energy. Now you're on a treadmill, you're just, turning the crank. Turning the crank will never get you where you need to go.
Let me ask the last question. So what are your any parting thoughts or wisdom for the aspiring entrepreneurs? There are a lot of folks in the startup tables and early startup tables here.
Last few months I've invested a lot more time with entrepreneurs, and I have just phenomenal respect for entrepreneurs, and I help to the best of my ability anyone actually who comes, because though HP became big, but HP started in a garage. Remember, it was a startup, but they just executed so well after that it became a great success story. My key parting thought to the entrepreneurs is surround yourself with people who are better than you. Because what ends up happening a lot of times, the founder starts thinking that this is my baby, I know it all. And sometimes the surrounding people around them don't ask the question or don't contribute as much as they can. So the key advice I can give you is ask yourself, where am I strong, where am I weak? Wherever you are weak, supplement with the stronger people around you. And as you supplement with stronger people around you, what you'll see is you'll just reinforce the company. And every startup is a piecewise linearization. No startup starts with an idea and 3 years later goes IPO with the same idea. Generally you end up, changing. If you surround yourself with people, you just mix the DNA. DNA becomes stronger. And as the antibodies came and the challenges came, the other DNA actually took over and gave you the strength. So my key advice would be, don't be humble. Surround yourself with people who are very good, in fact better than you. So if you're hiring a sales guy, make sure sales guy is far superior. And if you're the leader, you are the glue or the gravitational force. But each function has people stronger than you. If you can do that, very high likely you will succeed. So again, top 5 people you bring in the company, or top 10 people you bring in the company, makes it or breaks it.
Before we adjourn, I'd like to recognize Atul's wife. She's also here listening to him. I'm sure she listens to him every day. Sam, really, it's great. It's a great honor to have you over here. Let's give Atul. So Atul will be here for 4 more minutes, and until Dan starts switching on and off, that means get the heck out of here. Thank you again. Have a wonderful evening.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
No questions on Nagpur? I thought they were going to ask questions. Weren't Nagpur going to ask questions?
They were not equipped to ask, they were only able to receive. So I told them to, next time, this is what they need. I said, tell them to email that question, so we'll read that.
Yeah, at least email or something, yeah.
Well, yeah, so but they that's what I asked them, like, you should be not quite prepared. I said, but we're not going to disturb your setting because the recording is pretty good. They like it, so that's good. Yeah.
Next time we also got to get this set up earlier because they first download.
Well, I know, yeah. So, they have no logistics. But that's okay. We said, let's do it, and do it, and
Glad we did it.
No, it's a good idea.
yeah. So,
That should,
and we're going to dial in other chapters. So,
Yeah.
but the idea that because they need to benefit from.
you can do multiple chapters at a time.
Well, yeah. So there's a capacity limit. So
Yeah, right.
So the idea is that good chapters. No. They're using the Dynamo technology.
From Raj's company.
So that has, prices. some radio signal.
I thought it was the power going out in India again.
I think there's a saying that
We need to start.
more power comes more responsibility. Power goes out.
No responsibility.
That's exactly what happened. That's what happened.
Exactly right.
Sean.
I grew up in Chicago. Been here for a while?
I mean, Valley for about 3 years. Oh, I was, when I studied at Purdue for my first 2 years. They put it up on the sister.
Well, I grew up in Chicago.
My first job was engineering. Lived there for a year. You guys are getting Vegas for I mean, my background is stability. Right now, I do strategy and solving. Some of it, but more strategy and solving. Private equity, real estate. I mean, having a civil engineering background, I did project management, project management.
Right.
Having a master's in construction. We were asking that he made all these transitions. How much resistance did he find? Because it seems like maybe he was smart and lucky both. But there's serious resistance in the industry. And there's a lot of roadblocks that everything makes. He made it sound very articulate and easy.
Yeah.
But if everything was 1 + 1 is 2, I think our book would be successful. Yeah, I'm going to ask. What do you do, Prashant? If you have time, I want to pick your brain on it. That's how we are here.
Real estate side is very
Rohan? He was on VC 101 from he actually is applied to directly. So anyway, I had told him to come today. I said, Atul Bhatnagar. So Prashant is also on the board and he's a very ex-successful VC, the best VC. He's always going to give meetings. I can get you a meeting with the general partner there very quickly. That's Prashant. And he's also involved very actively with guys right from day one.
So you've already applied the titles, or you're
Just sent it in.
yesterday?
No, actually last week. So
Okay.
So he had already sold one of the companies and this is the second one. Very good team. I mean, he was impressed. I mean, Ryan also gave good feedback. But I don't know whether they do anything in the health.
they didn't actually. So he was going to see if he could
Actually, I
find
can also
someone.
introduce a few other VCs.
So is Prashant also in healthcare?
Yes, actually, specifically in the pharmacy industry.
Guys, I'm so sorry for the beginning, but for the last 1 hour we've been doing it live very, very smoothly. Everybody else is
So one of very Raj, one way, like if you can find, you know, it's really
For the discovering that it's because of siloing of the building.
yeah, I think
So if you want to create efficiencies and change the way we do the business, you have to actually disrupt all the And so that's something that we started to do 4 years ago by ourselves, and that's a big load to have.
let me introduce, I think Patricia is going to come there, the lady who is a registration. Yeah, so what do you do, Sherry?
I'm in financial services.
And one of our successes is partnership with healthcare. This is not UPS transportation, but get licensed as a pharmacy and also licensed as a distributor of meds and all those things. So
That's great.
and it's been a huge partnership. So we've got a deal with the network of 90 pharmacies, customer base, actually we've signed on 7 manufacturers.
No, I didn't mean to kick you.
And we've just generated our first revenue. So, yeah, so that's a good milestone.
Fantastic. I'll take a look at, since you already submitted last week, I'm sure we'll see it online. And we'll kind of go from there.
So from a perspective of the processes, what should submit that?
Now what'll happen is, so everything will be reviewed, hopefully by tomorrow. And you'll get either a yes or no. If it's a yes, then we'll invite you for next Monday. We'll just meet here. The time office, 6 o'clock. It starts at 6 o'clock. Schedule it to exactly which time. 10-minute presentation.